Hello, everybody. This is going to be number 105 of Mark talking about his things. Today, I'm going to be talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League because what the internet needs is more middle aged men talking about superhero movies and their fanboy expectations. And there is nothing that the internet and YouTube needs more, in my opinion, about this film. It's not strictly true, of course. The other thing I'm going to say before I get started about that is to just give you a quick kind of announcement about some content which will probably be turning up on the YouTube channel. Although I hate the word content, I am not a content provider. I'm going to leave that to Stuart Lee. Some of you have probably noticed I do write creatively. From time to time, I will be uploading that creative work which I've written, which I will be reading to the camera. It will probably be quite short. They won't be tagged with the phrase Notcast in front of them. You are, of course, under no obligation to watch them. If you don't like them, that's entirely up to you. But it is a part of me, and I think it's probably okay to give people a wider picture around who I am. So today, talking about, as I've mentioned before, Zack Snyder's Justice League. There's a bit of a history lesson to go with this, and we're going to leap all over the place when we talk about this. But first and foremost, I think probably the best thing to do is to start with a little bit of a history lesson. I think Superman on the big screen might actually be cursed, because there are two versions of the film called Justice League. There is Justice League, oh look, bright, shiny, lots of colours, and Zack Snyder's grim, dark, relentless, unthinking, over 4 hours long, double disc, remastered, super epic version of it. And you can tell the difference between the two. This one, obviously, it looks a little cheerier, a little bit more like a superhero movie. This looks like a super grim, dark movie indeed. And I have to be fairly blunt about it. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of Zack Snyder. I'll kind of talk about why, maybe probably in a minute, so that you know where I'm coming from. The history between these films is somewhere near the ending of the practical completion of the first bout of filming for Justice League. Zack Snyder left Justice League for personal family reasons, and Joss Wheedon was called in to rewrite the film, direct new scenes, and re-edit and recompile the movie together. And he created a 2-hour, fairly breezy superhero movie. Clearly having been brought in after the magic that he'd managed to perform with the Avengers movies into make them something else. Now, after many years of internet fanboys crying tears and going, "Release the Snyder Cut!" We had, I think on the 15th of May, the UK Blu-ray release, and DVD, of course, because everything comes out on DVD, of just Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is 4 hours and 2 minutes long, features the original director's vision as originally intended, which means it's over twice the length of Joss Whedon's Justice League, and has none of the Joss Whedon stuff in it, and all Zack Snyder all the time. It's a fascinating case story, actually, to see the difference between the two movies and to see just how different a director can be, or a director's influence can be. This might explain why James Bond films, you don't remember who ever made a James Bond film up until the past few years when Sam Mendes started doing them. Because the James Bond films were never about the director. The James Bond films were always about James Bond, everyone's favourite misanthropist, dinosaur, cunning linguist, and general all-around tuxedoed murderous toff. Now, I shouldn't criticise James Bond films. I'm watching all the James Bond films at the moment, so I can then talk about them at some future point in history, should anyone care. But there's only one other example, I think, of films being anything like this, where actually two versions of the same film credited to two different directors have been released. And that means you have to go all the way back in time to the release of Superman 2 in, I think, 1980. The original version of the film that was released in theatres in 1980 of Superman 2 was directed by Richard Lester, the original director of the film, who shot probably 70% of the movie, was Richard Donner. And due to cost overruns, Richard Donner was fired during the editing process, I think for Superman 1. And Richard Lester was brought in to reshoot and finish the movie in a considerably cheaper, faster fashion. Now, there are no movies where you can really see the difference up until Justice League. The difference between two directors working on the same movie than Superman 2. Superman 2, the Richard Lester version, is a quite broad brushstroke comedy. It's not by any means the best Superman film ever, but inside Superman 2, the Richard Lester version, there's a kernel of something fantastic, which has been kind of like built on. So it reminded me very much of, those stories where one kid writes one line and one kid writes another line, and then you end up with the princess riding a pony that's made out of hand grenades or something stupid. Superman 2 was potentially a very, very good film that was smothered in some quite broad, blunt activity. And we should remember, by the way, that Richard Lester was brought into the world of movies, or more correctly, was chosen for the Superman movies because he directed these two cinematic classics by a pop band that you may have heard about, the Beatles. And he directed Help and Hard Day's Night. Neither are particularly amazing movies. They're probably filmed as excuses because the Beatles couldn't tour and they still wanted to make money. When people think of the Beatles, they never think of Help and Hard Day's Night, or Magical Mystery Tour for that matter, actually. But these are broad, slapstick comedy movies, straight out of the world of Norman Wisdom and accidentally smacking yourself in the face with a fork. So Superman 2, the version directed by Richard Lester, featured an extra 50% footage, which it gets complicated. If more than 50% has been shot by one guy, it's his movie. And if more than 50% has been shot by the other guy, it's the other guy's movie. So with 70% of Superman 2 finished, they had to go and film an extra 20%, refilm 20% of the movie, plus the final finishing 30%, and then go back and Lesterize it. So the easy way to tell, by the way, Superman 2, if you're watching the Richard Lester cut, is if there's a lot of scenes of a bald bloke who looks oddly like Lex Luthor, but clearly isn't Gene Hackman, and you can't see his mouth moving, and his voice sounds like he's being overdubbed by some guy that's trying to sound like him, that's the Richard Lester cut, because Gene Hackman refused to come back. And if you don't have that tense kind of musical background, so that the score for Superman 2 was done by a guy called Ken Thorne, never heard of him, based upon original music by John Williams. And the Richard Lester cut, I think, has a different musical score in a number of places. There's a kind of like a tense barreling drum beat that signifies the appearance of the three bad guys in Superman 2. Well, bad guys and bad girls, actually, because it is nothing if not an equal opportunities future. And Superman 2 has that music in it, but the Richard Donner cut doesn't. So the Richard Donner cut is, I think, a very different movie from Superman 2, the Lester cut. It's a very good movie, but it's clearly a rough cut of the film. It's not finished, the music isn't finished, the effects aren't done. Not all of the scenes were shot, couldn't be shot. I think Donner had to use some of the Lester footage and then re-edit it. And they're two kind of flip sides of the same thing, really, two sides of the same coin. Superman 2 is a very good film. Of course, it gets complicated because there are actually 3 different cuts of Superman 2. Why am I talking about this and not Justice League? How will be revealed. Superman, the movie, comes in 2 forms. It comes in a just over 2 hours original theatrical cut, and it comes in an extended cut here, which is a 3-hour TV version of it. And in order to sell more adverts and break the film up and show it over 2 nights, they used to do extended television cuts of movies which added an extra half an hour to an hour of completely unnecessary scenes, padding it out just so they could sell more adverts. Extended international television cuts exist for Superman 1, Superman 2, Superman 3, and quite a lot of other movies as well. They are actually just boring to be honest, because it's like the main film plus an extra half hour of stuff dotted all the way through that you don't really need. Superman 2 has a couple of excellent scenes that are only in the television version that haven't been released to home video. These versions have been recompiled from people using VHS and Betamax tapes recorded off television broadcasts from the 80s and put them back together. And in some respects, Justice League feels like you're watching an extended television version of Zack Snyder's original vision of Justice League. So what we have a lot of the time is movie companies that, to be honest, aren't particularly good at making movies. They're particularly good at funding movies, but they aren't particularly good at creating cohesive finished products. There was a huge fight over a film called Brazil by Terry Gilliam in 1985. There was a version that was prepared by the movie studio, which ran to 94 minutes. There was Terry Gilliam's version, which ran to something like 142 minutes. And the version prepared by the movie studio is so bad that it only exists on a Criterion DVD release with a commentary and an explicit wodge of text at the beginning saying this film is pretty much awful. As a curio, there are alternate TV cuts of a number of movies as well. But what we also have is, I think there's a film called The Snowman, which you may have heard of, which they probably missed out about 15, 20 minutes of stuff they really needed to use to make the film make some kind of sense. But they didn't. They just edited what they had, shoved it together, put it into the cinema, and all the reviews were like, this film doesn't make any sense. It's absolute dog shit. But they still put it out. It's barely functional as a movie, The Snowman. You can really see the joins between the various parts of the movie. You kind of go, I'm surely I'm missing a bit. Did I pop out and just like not notice? I don't know. So yeah, strange. Now the DC cinematic universe is nowhere near as impressive as it likes to think it is. I think it kicked off with Man of Steel in 2013 and then was followed up with Zack Snyder's Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. Man of Steel, I think what they've got, they miscast Henry Cavill as Superman. He looks like Superman, but he doesn't act like Superman. With Henry Cavill, what you're looking at is a somewhat like life-size Lego minifig who's staring furiously and grimly at some kind of unending reality. He's a charisma vacuum as Superman. And he just hasn't got the charm or the personality that you would expect to be able to front that kind of role. Now, whether that role is written that way or whether that's Henry Cavill, I don't know. I don't particularly care. What I thought was that Man of Steel was a deeply disappointing movie. And then Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, or as I'd like to call it, Space Orphan vs Millionaire Psycho, is equally unimpressive. It's not the worst DC movie that I've seen. Suicide Squad is the worst DC movie I've ever seen, but it is somewhat incoherent, and it really lacks things like motivation. The Lex Luthor in these movies is very, very thinly drawn and not charismatic, doesn't behave or have the motivations you would expect for somebody that wants to take over and or destroy the world. One of the big problems there is with the DC universe, actually, is that you've got all these bad guys and they all follow a set pattern, is that there's an alien power. This happens in the Avengers movies as well, obviously with Thanos and the Snap. But there's an alien power that wants to rule the Earth and it needs MacGuffins. MacGuffins are a thing that Alfred Hitchcock invented, which is it's the object that you need in order to make it happen. There's a 60s movie called It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, where people are chasing, some buried treasure. That's the MacGuffin. It doesn't even need to exist. It just needs to exist in order to motivate people to do things. All the Star Wars movies are built on a MacGuffin because the MacGuffin in the Star Wars movies is the Death Star plans and not in the main computer. They're in the tin-plated, talking, walking bin. That's how it is. And then, even the Rise of Skywalker has a quest for a thing called a Wayfinder? It's basically the search for the map. The Phantom Menace is the search for the missing spark plug. All these movies need to have people that need to be chasing something that they don't have in order for the whole of the plot to exist. And for the Justice League movies, it's a thing called mother boxes, which apparently are change machines. I'm not even sure what that actually means. But they're the MacGuffins. They're the things that the baddies need in order to make whatever it is that they want to make happen, and they're the things the goodies have to stop the baddies from having. Very basic, simple, simplistic storytelling. And of course, what's not explained in these movies, and believe me, I've watched Man of Steel, the super extended mega version of Batman vs Superman, the Ultimate Edition, and both versions of Justice League in the past few days, is that it's never explained what the motive is. Why do the bad guys want to take control of the world? Why do they want these change machines? What do they want to achieve? What is their end purpose? In Moonraker or The Spy Who Loved Me, for example, Stromberg and Drax both say, well, mankind is a cancer and I'm building a world underneath the sea or above the stars where I can repopulate Earth with people in my own image, like some kind of budget poundland corporate Hitlers. It's not explained to me, unless I missed some casual tossed off bit of dialogue, what the motive is. They just want power because they want power, and that's. But why? And what are you going to do with that power? And why do you want the change machine? I think Thanos wanted to restore life back to the way it was before he was hurt, which makes perhaps a little bit more sense. But in these Justice League movies, I can't get it, man. And I mean, I really have a very low opinion of Batman versus Superman, Dawn of the Grimdark, primarily because I don't think Zack Snyder is a great filmmaker, and I've barely touched upon that, but I'll kind of explain why. I think the films which Zack Snyder's made which are good despite his abilities. So, for example, his best movie is clearly Watchmen. And that's because that's built on some incredible source material to start with. And it's a kind of source material that you can't really screw up. Although the theatrical cut of the movie is not amazing. There are 3 different cuts of Watchmen. There's the standard theatrical version, there's this, the director's cut, and then there's this, the 5-disc ultimate cut, the complete story, which this edition was only released in America, by the way, which of course, if you're in America, you go, yeah, mate, I've been seeing this on the shelves for ages, I had to import this. It features the complete story of Watchmen on 3 DVDs, plus a thing called the complete motion comic as well. And it's in this huge kind of boxy type thing. The ultimate cut, by the way, is pretty damn ultimate. It's really good, but the director's cut I prefer. And the Watchmen is a great film despite Zack Snyder, and I'll kind of explain why. Now, if you watch the other films that Zack Snyder's made, 300, Sucker Punch, I think it's Dawn of the Dead, Army of the Dead, Dead of the Dead, probably he's made that as well, I don't know. He's about as subtle as a kick in the balls while being soundtracked by Leonard Cohen. And his filmmaking is very blunt, it's very obvious, it's very surface. And I was watching, I think it's Army of the Dead, I think the one which is set in Vegas, which went onto Netflix a couple of weeks ago. And there's a scene where one character, you don't know if he's a zombie or if he's not a zombie, it's soundtracked by a delicate acoustic remix of Cranberry's Zombie, which firstly is incredibly insulting to anybody that has any memory of the IRA bombings and the conflict that there was in Ireland, but also it's tone deaf stupid. You might as well have a flashing sign, neon alerts and arrows pointing to something going director's message here. He makes Uwe Boll look like Kubrick in terms of his subtlety. Believe me, Zack Snyder is not subtle. If he could, he'd probably have a bit where he goes, this is the message, this is the speech, this is the thing that you need to know, this is what I believe in. The whole story is about Superman being Jesus Christ, mate. If I could have called him Flying Jesus, I would have done, but they wouldn't let me call him Flying Jesus, so I had to call him Superman, which is kind of, and it's like, mate, just learn the art of subtlety. Sometimes a whisper and a wink is more important than a nuclear explosion and a Leonard Cohen song. They really are 2 very different films. And by the way, I strongly rate Watchmen. I strongly disrate. I think Sucker Punch is awful. 300 is awful. The Army of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Dead of the Dead movies are... It's kind of like watching someone play a guitar while wearing boxing gloves, watching a Zack Snyder movie. There's talent in there, but there's so much not talent in there as well that it's really difficult to work out which bits are good and which bits are accidentally good. If you gave an infinite monkey cage, an infinite set of typewriters, eventually one of them would write Hamlet. But if that was the only one you saw, you'd think the monkey was talented. But as it turned out, it's just some kind of chance, some alignment of freak events that made it somehow turn into something good. Um, yeah, so I'm not a fan of Zack Snyder's movies. I like his movies despite him. Now you can argue, well, I'm still talking about his movies. Sure, I am. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I recommend them, and some of them I definitely don't. And Space Orphan versus Millionaire Psycho, Grim Dark Justice is perhaps not my favourite one of his movies. I think Zack Snyder's Justice League is probably the second best of his movies, but it's not really one movie. So if you compare these two, these are two different movies with the same title, made at roughly the same time, with different directors. And there's maybe 10-15% of footage which is the same between these two. So there's probably at least 3.5 hours that's different in this film than there is in this film. In this film, there's probably half an hour-ish that's in this film, although the half hour in this is obviously re-edited and changed somewhat dramatically. So the two scenes, even if they're the same, are dramatically and drastically different. Justice League has more jokes in it. It's got a lighter, airier tone. It feels, I think, more rushed. It feels as if you haven't got time to just stop and think about what's going on around you. It feels like a castrated, made for television, vastly edited for time and content version that might be shown on an airplane version of the movie. And it feels like it's just constantly running to the end of the next scene, like there's a stopwatch, and if you don't get to the next action sequence in 14 minutes, that perhaps the editor is going to be murdered. So everything is sliced down to the absolute minimum. I think Justice League is okay compared to this. Justice League is terrible. It's like a 3 out of 10. Although, as I've said before, Zack Snyder's not my favourite filmmaker. I find the fact that Zack Snyder's Justice League exists is absolutely fascinating. So, Justice League with Zack Snyder, I'll just call it Justice League from now on, is not even one movie. It's 4 hours long. It's probably about 3 movies because there's a Flash origin story in there, there's a Cyborg origin story in there, and then there's a story of the Justice League itself. So it feels like you're watching 3 movies all wrapped around each other. All the dialogue, the takes that are used are often very different. The extra elements, there's humour, there's jokes in the original one that aren't in this. There's jokes in this that aren't in that, where they're a slightly different sense of humour. They're just very, very different movies. And I think Zack Snyder's Justice League would be a really good 3-hour movie. Although it's obviously leading into a sequel, which I think isn't going to be made. But it's a bloated 4-hour movie that's divided into 6 parts. It's like watching a mini series, which actually happens to accidentally have been made into a movie. It's the kind of length where if you put, let's say, Batman versus Superman, although that's Justice League, you put Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, Zack Snyder's Justice League together, you've got a 9-hour television miniseries that costs something like 400 million bazillion pounds. And it really feels like that's what you're watching. Yeah, it's a ballsy, audacious thing, but it's not particularly good at all. It's an art movie as well. There are huge scenes where the film kind of stops, drops out of the narrative and does something else and then comes back later on. So the scene where the Flash is introduced and Flash's origin story, that feels like a short film that's inserted into the middle of Justice League, which is obviously very similar to the ultimate cut of Watchmen that drops in and out of Tales of the Black Freighter for half an hour at a time, and then suddenly reminds you, oh yeah, by the way, you are actually watching something else. The other thing with Justice League is that it breathes, it has time, it knows that it does not necessarily got an eye on getting as many screenings into one day as possible. And that's one of the things that they used to do, is they used to cut down screenings. They used to cut down the theatrical version just so you could have more screenings in a day, so you could sell more tickets. Although when I've been to the cinema, the days of standing outside the Tivoli or the Futurist and queuing down the block while the film was showing on both the screens and hoping that if you didn't get in for the 8 o'clock, you might get in for the 9 o'clock showing. Those days, they're long gone. The last time I was at a cinema screening that was even vaguely near sold out was the first night of, I think it was Skyfall, might have been Spectre. 2015, maybe 2012. That was the last time I was in a screening that was actually sold out. And I was absolutely staggered because every other time I've been to the cinema since at least around about 1994. Actually, no, 1997 was the last time before then that I've been to a screening that was sold out when we saw Titanic. Um, every time I've been to a cinema since Titanic, I didn't see Blair Witch at the cinema, but every time I've been to the cinema since Titanic, apart from Blair Witch, it has not been sold out. I mean, I saw Matrix in its first week. It was nowhere near sold out in Britain. I saw Battlefield Earth. I think I was, there was about 5 people in that cinema. By the time that I walked out, there had been 4 people. By the time I walked out, there were 3. And that was the last film I walked out of, was Battlefield Earth. That and Hancock. But now, when you're watching a movie, you think, well, 4 hours is an awful lot big commitment of time. And you have to be absolutely in the mindset for it. And Justice League runs to over 4 hours. There's no way that this film would exist in a 4-hour cut if it had been released as a theatrical exhibition. The other thing around Justice League is it is presented in 4:3 ratio. Now, there is a difference between that and Justice League here. Justice League is presented in widescreen. This is presented 4:3. The reason it's presented in 4:3 for Justice League is that is the nearest aspect ratio that there is to the size of an IMAX screen. So the whole film was effectively, I think, created for an IMAX, and then they had like picture blocking. So the top and bottom of the screen on Justice League, when you're watching Zack Snyder's Justice League, doesn't really need to be there. They did the same thing that Stanley Kubrick did when he shot a lot of his movies. Stanley Kubrick shot in 4:3, and he had black bars on his cameras, on his viewfinders, not on the cameras themselves, so he could see which bits would be shown in the cinema and then which bits would be shown on television. And the bits that were shown on television, the top and the bottom of the screen, weren't that important. He wanted to make sure he got all the action inside the aspect ratio. Now, of course, that could be wrong. The last time I read anything like that was around about 1999. I've seen some making of footage for The Shining where they've got a shot of Kubrick's monitor, and it's got the black bars on the monitor, so he knows what bits are going to be shown in the cinemas and what bits are going to be shown on television. So the television visual of things like The Shining, if it's presented in 1:3:3 or 4:3, there's more information on there. There's more information on Justice League. If you watch a frame-by-frame comparison of stuff in Justice League versus stuff in Zack Snyder's Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, I think, has more information that's in there, but it's got black bars on either side of the screen. To be honest, I kind of forgot the black bars were there. But it does remind you're not watching the same type of movie than you are, because Justice League was clearly designed to be watched in cinemas, and Zack Snyder's Justice League was first launched on HBO Max and has now had a physical disc release for those of you that don't subscribe to HBO Max. I certainly wasn't going to subscribe to yet another streaming platform in order to watch this. I don't care enough about it. But what the companies want to do is they want to nickel and dime us into having individual subscriptions with all of their platforms. They want us to have HBO Max, Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, all these things. And I'm like, barely got enough time to watch what I want to watch, let alone to be paralysed by choice from 6 or 7 different platforms that you all want to lock me into a permanent subscription. If I could buy The Mandalorian on DVD or Blu-ray, I would. I'd buy it the first day it came out. But I can't be paying £5.99 a month for a subscription to yet another online platform that I barely have enough time to watch, just because it's got Star Wars TV on it. Star Wars TV is going to be there forever. And if they want my money, they can sell me, silver discs with the things on, as opposed to sell me the option to watch it on a screen on a streaming platform. I just haven't got the time. I like to own what I buy, as opposed to rent what I buy. It's kind of like the movies that what they want to do is they want to keep the ownership of everything, and they just want to sell you the right to be able to watch it, as opposed to sell you a physical copy of things. Obviously, as you've worked out, I'm the kind of dude that likes physical media, and so for me, if it's streaming only, it's very rare that I'll get a chance to see it. I've got Netflix because that's like £5, and I got a Netflix trial when The Keep was on Netflix, and it wasn't available anywhere else apart from on Laserdisc and VHS. We got Amazon Prime recently because I buy a lot of stuff off Amazon and want it to be delivered, the next day. But for this, no. I don't care enough about Justice League to subscribe to yet another online platform to watch it. And so I bought the Blu-ray when it came out a couple of weeks ago. Now, what I will say is it probably should have been 2 movies. Justice League is a radically different version of the movie in every way, shape, or form. It just shows you how much influence I think a director can have upon it. It's Zack Snyder's second best movie. If you've seen Joss Whedon's Justice League, you have not seen Zack Snyder's Justice League. Zack Snyder's Justice League beats the ever-loving shit out of the Joss Whedon version. It's so much better. It's kind of embarrassing for Joss Whedon, but obviously Joss Whedon has his own problems to deal with. The other thing around Zack Snyder's Justice League is it's an epic in every way, shape, or form. It's 4 hours long. It's effectively 3 movies wrapped around inside it. As I've said, it's the Flash origin story, the Cyborg origin story, and the Justice League movie. It's got better battles, better staging, even the cutting and editing on the scenes that are in both of the movies. The Zack Snyder version is the definitive version of this. If they make a sequel, sure is going to be difficult to work out. Which movie are they going to make a sequel to? Are they going to make a sequel to Joss Whedon's? Or are they going to make a sequel to Zack Snyder's? Or are they going to make a sequel that could work for both of them, which is going to be really difficult, considering there are characters that are in this that don't exist in that, and vice versa. I think the other things I will say is Batfleck is really good. He looks like he's been parachuted in from a much better movie, and I think he's easily the best thing about it. Henry Cavill is, as I've said before, either the way he's written or the way he's portrayed it is a charisma vacuum. There's a furious minifig staring grimly at everything. The epilogue, which only exists in this, seems to set up a film which they're probably not going to make, and it probably should be split into 2 movies, if I'm honest, given the length of it, because Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, actually comes in 6 chapters, so effectively it's 6 40 to an hour long episodes of a TV show called Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's an incredible thing to watch, to see the difference between the 2, but it is not. These are not great superhero movies at all, because the problems that I have with the Zack Snyder and the DC extended universe are that they're very grim. They're joyless places to exist. No one looks like they've ever smiled or had fun or petted a dog in these movies. The bad guys are very thinly drawn. They want to take over the earth for reasons, and to have to get mother boxes, whatever those are. And it's almost like video game plotting. It's like, go here, do that, then do this, then do that, then do that, then do this, then do that, then do that, then activate the power up, then kill the bad guys. And it's very formulaic. In fact, I would say one of the biggest problems with Joss Whedon's Justice League is that, lo and behold, the ending of the movie is set in a former communist or communist Russian city that appears to have been derelict and taken over by bad guys, which reminds me very much of the Avengers movie when I think it's Thanos tries to take and tries to lift a whole kind of Hungarian city into the air. It just feels like you've only got one idea, haven't you? And there were scenes where if you put shots from Joss Whedon's Justice League into that Avengers movie, apart from the fact that one's set in day and one's set at the night, you could easily think that they'd be the same thing. The same movie. It's kind of like when you watch a movie and it's not even a sequel, it's just a remake. Like Cannonball 2 is a remake of Cannonball Run 1, and Cannonball Run 2 is awful, and Cannonball Run 1 is almost as bad, And then you get to the point where you're dealing with episodic, repetitive television, like the Monster of the Week stuff that's in Star Trek, or Most Haunted or something, or CSI. As every week it's a murder. It's almost like watching Night Boat. There's always a fjord or a canal or a river that you can chase the bad guys on. It's a bit predictable. And as I've said before, I think when Casualty is on, sometimes we play Guess the Tragedy. So you watch it and you go, right, so who's going to die and how are they going to die? And it's fairly predictable. It's Monster of the Week type stuff. And so Zack Snyder's Justice League is, by his standards, it's his second best movie. By absolute standards, it's unamazing. It's definitely worth watching. If you've got the choice between only having either this or the Joss Whedon movie in your life, go for this. It's so much better, because I think Joss Whedon's Justice League is a really bad movie. Zack Snyder's Justice League is immensely better. And I think there's maybe 5-6 shots. There's a little bit of reshoots that have happened in the past year or so in Zack Snyder's Justice League. You can kind of tell if you look at the weight of a couple of the characters or the wrinkles around their eyes, but that's it. Everything else, it just looks like it was made at the time. So I think where I'm going to wrap up here is, okay, I wasn't expecting to talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League, but then again, I wasn't expecting to watch it. His DC universe is not amazing. It's compared to the Marvel one, it's a real missed goal. But if you are going to watch one of the movies, don't go for the Joss Whedon one. Go for Zack Snyder's Justice League. It is so much better. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good. It just means it's not quite as bad as the other one. But of course, as we all know, the definitive cinematic Superman is Christopher Reeve, and the 3 films that he made as Superman. Apparently, there is a wicked rumour that there is a 4th film called Superman 4: Quest for Peace. But I think that that's imaginary, because I have no recollection of that film existing. And had I ever heard or watched such a thing, I'm sure I would have banished it from my memory in much the same way as if someone had told me that there'd been an Indiana Jones film called Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There are only 3 Indiana Jones films. There's only 3 Superman films. Okay, there is no 4th Superman film with Christopher Reeve. There is no 4th Indiana Jones film with Harrison Ford. As I have explained to other people, it is fan fiction that somehow has been put into my box set of DVDs and Blu-rays by mistake. Okay, so that's my obviously highly essential opinion about Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I am going to wrap up here. I don't know when I'm going to do another one of these or what I'm going to be talking about. I have some things in mind. I'm sure it's no great surprise to you, because if you've been watching the other ones, you will know I'm going through artist discographies in the order of release and chronologically up to the present day. I thought I'd give you a shock by talking about something that wasn't made in 1987, although I did end up talking about some Superman film that doesn't exist that may or may not have been made in 1987, and to kind of give you some indication that these have been filmed at some point after Margaret Thatcher left power. But rest assured, there will be more of that as we go along. In the meantime, stay beautiful, look after yourselves, don't be a dick in the comments, and I will see you all again. Thank you, and adios amigos, as the Ramones had it on their last live album. See you later. Bye.